Well, we're live.
We are?
We're live.
Wow.
Are you ready to talk about this movie?
I am. Are you?
I am. I'm curious to hear what you think. We didn't talk about it. This is be an interesting one.
Yes, it will.
Interesting follow-up to Godzilla vs. Monster Zero.
For sure.
Yeah, we're watching all kinds of crazy movies now.
Yeah, we are.
And it'll be pretty exciting. Well, I guess we're just gonna find out what you thought, Elizabeth.
I guess we will.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, and your sommelier of cinema. And I am here with my compatriot,
Elizabeth Gwendolyn Bell. The ace. The arbiter of cinematic excellence.
Indeed, and what else?
The enchantress of entertainment.
The enchantress of entertainment. And we have a fine movie.
Yes,
for you
do.
fine folks, you imagination connoisseurs. This is WINEning About Movies, episode 29.
29.
We started this as a lark, and we're 29 episodes in.
That's insane.
It is insane. That means we've been doing this for like 10 weeks.
Wow.
10 weeks of sheltering at home.
Wow.
Are you tired of the show yet?
No, but I'm tired of sheltering at home.
I'm tired of sheltering at home, too. You know what I'm not tired of, though? I'm not tiring of getting boxes of wine in the mail. They just show up at our doorstep. We don't even have to go out and get them. They just come.
It just comes.
Now, tonight we're drinking Jean Pascal. Is this French?
No.
Well, I don't know. Jean Pascal sounds French to me. Is it not? Here we go. This is what we're drinking. And it is what, a Cab Sauv? It's a Grand Reserve.
Yeah, I think it's a Cab Sauv.
I think, yes it is, yeah. Cab Sauv. All right, well, 2018. Well, Elizabeth, here goes your Cab Sauv. While we talk about Connor McLeod of the Clown McLeods.
Yep.
Tonight's movie is a movie that spawned 5 sequels, including an anime sequel.
You're kidding.
I'm not kidding. Russell Mulcahy's seminal 1986 Highlander. It also spawned a TV series.
I kind of vaguely remember a TV series. I never watched it.
And in my own mind, this is one of 4 movies that defined the MTV influence, the music video influence on movies. This would be the 4th of 4. The first being 2 from 1983. Adrian Lyne's Flashdance, Tony Scott's The Hunger, and they came out of the commercial music video realm, and then Walter Hill's Streets of Fire, as I'm spitting, and Russell Mulcahy, the director of this, directed very famous Duran Duran videos, the videos from the Rio album, and so they tapped him. This is his second feature after the Australian Outback thriller about a horror movie about a razorback, a wild boar.
Oh.
Razorback.
Okay. So
this is his film Highlander. So we drink to Connor McLeod and the Clan McLeods.
Yes.
Well, cheers to Highlander.
Cheers.
So this movie has a lot of things people remember for it. Not just Sean Connery as Ramirez, not just Clancy Brown as the Kurgan, but Queen's soundtrack, and the very MTV cinematography and editing.
Okay, is that what that was?
Yes, that's what that was.
that was that.
And of course, this movie was originally written by a film student.
Yes.
Gregory Wyden, who I believe later went on to write Backdraft and other films. He was actually a fireman. You found out.
Yeah.
He began as a paramedic when he was 17. And then he took the test to become a firefighter when he was 18, and they let him. He was like the youngest firefighter.
Yep.
In Los Angeles.
While he was in school.
While he was in film school, and he was encouraged to write this script.
He was. His teacher thought it was good and told him to keep writing it.
Well, the real question is, what was the script he wrote about, Elizabeth?
Okay, so you start off with, I think it was it
was a wrestling match in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
Which wasn't supposed to be a wrestling match. It was supposed to be a hockey game because it was the hockey sticks held aloft that made Connor McLeod think of the battles, but the NHL wouldn't allow them.
Yeah, but the wrestling was so 80s. I mean, that was like that was huge in the 80s.
It was huge it's huge now, but it was huge in the 80s.
I mean, come on.
It
man.
was huge in the 80s.
As kids, we all watched wrestling, except maybe you.
I did not.
I did.
Wrestling had no verisimilitude for me.
Well, right.
None at all.
It was all about the characters.
I don't know anything about that now.
Even Andre the Giant was wrestling.
I know. Hulk Hogan, Rocky 3.
Yeah.
I was there.
Yeah.
So
anyway, so they're at a wrestling match, and then the camera settles on this guy up in the balcony who is not even really paying attention to the
Nash.
wrestling match. What was he doing there anyway?
We don't really know.
He was just there.
It didn't seem like
he
it
wasn't
would be...
paying attention to the wrestling match. And he starts having these flashbacks that don't memories, but you don't know they're memories because it doesn't make sense because the memories are of a kind of medieval fighting
in the Scottish Highlands.
Right. So at that point you're perplexed, like what are these images? Why is this popping up? So then he gets up and he goes into the underground parking structure
to presumably drive home.
Right. Why was he there? I don't know. Anyway, he is in the parking structure and this guy says McLeod, and he turns around and they both whip out swords.
Well, it looks like he looks like a Wall Street banker.
Right, he's in a suit.
He's in a suit and tie. He's got a British accent.
Yeah.
Totally out of place.
Totally out of place. And they both whip out their swords and start fighting.
As one does. And it's all kinds of... I mean, they're battling all in through the underground parking garage.
They are. And at one point, the British dude who's older does backflips. I was so confused.
Somersaults.
Yeah, they were backflips. Like a whole bunch of backflips.
A whole bunch of piece of powerful old man.
It was weird. I was so perplexed. Okay, so they're having this fight, and then finally...
So did you have any idea what this movie was about?
No.
You had no idea what this movie was about. Okay.
But, with the flashbacks and everything, is this like a time travel thing? Maybe he traveled through time, and he's got a mission in the future or something. I don't know. So...
Well, in the present day, the movie's set in 1985.
But then when he whips out the sword... Right. He whips out the sword, I'm like, oh, maybe, I don't know what I was thinking.
But then they start fighting.
They start fighting, and he finally chops the guy's head off.
And they knew each other.
Yeah, they knew each other. And then all this weird, crazy stuff happens. Like blue electric things.
The quickening.
And then the cars started, like, turning on and moving, and... things were popping off the cars and stuff was just like breaking and it was weird. And then...
And did you get the idea that he was channeling this energy?
Something was happening.
Okay.
So he then hides his sword in this thing hanging from the ceiling and then gets into a car and leaves.
His old Porsche.
Yeah. The car was nice. He gets in the car and starts leaving, and all of a sudden the cops show up and arrest him. I don't know how the cops would have known so quickly that there was a commotion in the basement.
Cops, there must be good cops. We're in New York City, by the way. Madison Square Garden, it's New York City.
Okay, well...
So New York City cops are on it, apparently. But yeah,
like
you're right.
It's not like they had guns and you could hear shooting. They
No.
were sword fighting.
Maybe somebody saw them sword fighting and called the cops.
Okay.
You don't know. And he was in a real hurry, trying to get out of the parking structure, and then they arrest him.
Right. Okay, so they arrest him, and they... This is the weird part. They take him to the fire station, or the police station, and they start questioning him when obviously he's the only one who left the parking structure. I don't know why they didn't, there was a dead body, a guy without a head down there. Yeah, why didn't they charge him
Well, what evidence do they have? There's no murder weapon. They haven't found a murder weapon.
Yeah,
They don't know
that's
what's
true.
up.
Well, anyway, so they are questioning him. And he gets into a fight with one of the cops who calls him a fag. And then he's like, do I have to, am I under arrest? And they're like, no. And then so he just leaves.
And we should say at the murder scene, there is Roxanne Hart plays Brenda Wyatt. Mm-hmm. Brenda, she is a forensic pathologist investigating murders, but she's also apparently written a book on metallurgy. Not only is she a forensic pathologist, but
what a coincidence.
She also has a keen interest in metallurgy and swords.
Wow. What a coincidence.
As one does.
Right?
You know, when I worked for the police, when I was a forensic analyst or investigator, I too had a predilection for swords.
Yeah, and did you write a book about it?
No, but I thought about it. I thought about writing a book about it. So
how convenient.
And this woman actually finds shards.
She finds pieces of the metal from the sword.
Fragments of the metal from Connor McLeod's sword.
Right. The other sword, she was like, oh my God, this is worth $1 million or whatever. Very old sword. And so then she finds these shards from McLeod's sword, and she analyzes it, and she knows that it's like an ancient...
It's a Japanese sword the metal's been folded many, many times, but because of how she dates the metal, it's like 1,000 years older than an actual sword should be from the Middle Ages, and it can't possibly, so she's confused.
Right, which they never tie that loose end up.
Well, okay, and then what do we learn about McLeod?
Okay, so then what happens? McLeod...
We go back in time.
Oh, yeah. We do? Oh, yeah. So, yes, we go back in time, and you see a band of men kind of chanting McLeod, and they're obviously marching off to a battle. And so they are going to battle against another clan that I don't know why they're fighting. But this is McLeod's first...
It's his first battle.
Connor
McLeod.
Connor's first battle.
And all of his friends are there. Everyone's very supportive of him. Everybody's very nice.
Yeah, his relatives.
And it's the same dude. It's the same dude that we met. The same dude in '85. It's clearly the same dude. Both played by Christopher Lambert. Now, what did you think was happening at this point in the movie? Did you think there was still time travel involved, or how did you feel about we're seeing the same character in like 500 years apart?
Yeah, I was still thinking time travel.
Okay.
So he goes to the battle, and there is a large, very scary looking guy on the opposite side.
The Kurgan,
who says, nobody fight him, he's mine. So they're in the battle, and nobody is fighting him, and he's like, what the fuck? Nobody's fighting me.
Yeah, he's screaming and yelling.
It's kind of sad.
I mean, it's his first battle, and no one wants to take him on.
Until finally, the Kurgan dude comes and basically stabs him. Stabs him in the stomach. And he drops to the ground, and then his clan, the McLeods, come and like tackle the Kurgan. And then you see that they take Connor home, and he's on his deathbed.
I mean, he's dying. He's gonna die.
Yeah, he's on his deathbed, and they say, okay, he's gonna die. You just have to let him die, and that's it. He's not gonna survive this. And so the next day, you see they're in the pub drinking, and all of a sudden he walks in.
And McLeod's even got a girlfriend.
Yeah.
Like his girlfriend and all of his friends and everybody. And then Connor McLeod comes in the bar, and everybody's like, they're terrified of him.
Yeah, they're freaked out because he was literally almost dead. And now he's just walking around asking for drinks. So they are freaking out.
They think he's the devil.
Yeah, they're like, he's possessed. Get him out of here. So they start beating him up. They beat him up.
Even his girlfriend, who presumably loved him, turns on him.
She was wailing the night before. She was in Nanny McPhee.
Nanny McPhee.
She was. She was in Annie
Good
McPhee.
callback.
Anyway, okay, so they beat him up, and finally his cousin is like, okay, they want to kill him, and his cousin's like, no, just banish him. So he starts wandering around, and he ends up. Later on, you see that he's with this beautiful girl.
He's settled down with a beautiful girl and has a nice life.
He has a nice life.
Living in an old castle.
Yeah.
And things are good between
them.
them.
Cool, like, cheese wedge of a castle.
This cheese wedge of a castle. But it's beautiful. Shot in...
gorgeous.
Everywhere. And you're going in between this medieval time, watching him in his life, and then you cut back to the present day.
Yeah.
And the cops are trying to figure out what's going on. And
yeah.
And you find out that McCloud is a antiques dealer, and this older, very pretty, elegant woman works for him.
Right.
And at the same time, this metallurgist is trying to figure out what's up with this sword. He goes back and gets the sword, a very special sword with like a white ivory hilt.
He goes back and gets it.
And then she's following him, and he sees her there, and they kind of follow each other.
Yeah.
She's looking when she finds the shards, the fragments. He's gone back to retrieve his sword and sees her.
Oh, right.
And then he follows her.
He follows her. She goes into a bar. He follows her into the bar. He tries to hit on her, and she's like, "Get out of here, dude!" And she leaves, and then waits for him, and then he leaves, and she follows him, and then he ends up in this weird dark place, and the Kurgan is there. But he sees her, and he grabs her hand, and he pushes her out of the way so she won't get hurt. And so then he has this fight with the Kurgan dude.
So the Kurgan that we've seen is now in the present day in New York City.
Right.
And we've now come to understand that the reason there's the other guy that we met at the beginning of the movie that they fought with, the Kurgan is here. There's the gathering is happening. Right. The gathering is happening in New York. So there are other people like Connor McCloud. The Kurgan now we know is one of them.
Well, we don't know about the gathering yet because first I don't know if we're telling the story out of order.
It doesn't matter. The whole movie's out of order. It goes back and forth between time. So the way we're describing the plot can go back and forth between the actual plot.
Yeah, but it's Sean Connery that tells him about the gathering.
Well,
he tells him about everything.
That's true. We haven't even got to Sean Connery yet. So why don't you tell us about Sean Connery?
Well, it's the best part of the movie.
Okay, well, let's go back. He fights the Kurgan. Now we're going to go back in time.
I wish he had been wearing his package with a bow.
Sean Connery, our second sighting after Zardoz. I think after Zardoz, this has to be Ramirez is definitely a follow-up to Zed from Zardoz.
Yeah, I think Sean Connery should have been the main character in this movie.
Well, they probably couldn't get him for enough time.
Yeah, well...
So we go back in time where Connor McCloud is now living with his girlfriend.
He's living with his
beautiful girl.
His wife.
They're blissful. They love each other, but they're childless.
Right. So Sean Connery shows up, and he's wearing this really crazy Spanish outfit and feathers, and he shows up, and McCloud's like, "Who are you?"
And he says he's Egyptian, but he came by way of Spain. That he used to be the armor for the Spanish king.
And then later on he says he's Egyptian, and it's like, oh, but he's the
got
only
a Scottish
one,
accent.
He's the only one who's Scottish, who's
right.
actually Scottish. So that was very confusing. Yeah, Sean Connery should have been.
And he's the Obi-Wan Kenobi of this movie.
He is. Well, yeah, sort of.
Well. Or Yoda. He's Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda.
Yeah.
And what happens?
That he's way more...
Well, he's been around for a lot longer. He's made more worldly. So what do you find out? What does Sean Connery tell Connor McCloud?
Okay, so he starts training him how to sword fight and all this, and then he tells him that he is... is there even a name for these people?
They're just immortals.
So, yeah, they're basically immortal.
But he doesn't know where they come from.
Yeah, where do they come from?
Well, you don't find out till Highlander 2, but the less said about that, the better. You don't need to know about that right now. It doesn't matter.
That was like one of my questions.
Yeah, but it's better you don't know that. So in this movie, Sean Connery says, who knows? We don't know why we're immortal. They don't know why they're here.
Okay. So they're immortal. And then he tells him that the only way you can die is to be beheaded.
Mm-hmm.
And then he also tells him that there will be a gathering, and in the end, there's only one that can survive.
And who gets the prize?
Who gets the prize?
And they train. And there's all these great, beautiful aerial shots and training shots, and
right
in the Scottish Highlands, and Connor McLeod's beautiful wife. He also tells her, you have to leave your wife.
Yeah, he tells her because
you can't have kids.
Yeah, they can't have kids. So he advises him to leave his wife because he will end up watching her die because she will age and he won't. And that he had been married 3 times and he had suffered the loss of his wives. And so he was telling him that he should leave his wife.
And you also find out that he was in Japan 1,000 years before samurai swords were being made, and there was people making swords 1,000 years before.
I guess so.
And it's Ramirez's sword that's very, very old.
Right. And he ends up giving it to him, I guess. Or he takes he takes it after the Kurgan.
Well, yeah, that's a big thing. So what happens? What happens? You can't just... So Ramirez has imparted his wisdom to Connor McLeod, and Connor McLeod is now trained under him.
Yes.
Ramirez has told Connor McLeod everything he needs to know about fighting and all that. And,
yeah.
And then
this is another weird part. So
this is a very weird part of this movie
weird.
Like, Connor McLeod just suddenly gone.
He's like gone.
He's gone somewhere.
Sean Connery is having dinner with
the girlfriend.
with the wife. And
like, it's not even mentioned. Like, did he go get some food? Has he gone shopping? Did he go hunting?
Right?
Like, he's just gone.
There.
He's just gone.
So weird.
It was not exactly one of the writers said that came on board said that Russell Mulcahy drove the continuity people crazy in this movie. That he wasn't really that, this movie doesn't exactly, continuity is not one of its strong suits.
No.
The editorial of this movie, Peter Honas cut this movie. It's all over the place when it comes to its editing. It's
all over the
shot
place.
to shot, but it's so music video in that sense, where there's not a lot of continuity, but that's what sort of gives it its feel. I mean, it's so Baroque. It's kind of all over the place, and it's not like you're watching these shots happening and the scenes don't quite flow. I don't know if you felt that way, but
yeah, definitely.
And there's a lot of unmotivated moving cameras just because it looks cool, and I mean, the lighting is it's kind of all over the place. This movie is very messy.
It's
in terms of its production.
And the acting.
Yeah,
except for Sean Connery.
Yeah, Christopher. Yeah, they're like in different movies. Christopher Lambert is not exactly the greatest thespian in the world.
No.
And and Roxanne Hart as Brenda, her acting's maybe not the strongest. As a romantic,
wasn't horrible,
but as a romantic lead, I don't think she does not capture your attention.
She's girl next door.
She is girl next door. She's girl next door.
Yeah.
But because she's a forensic psychologist or a forensic investigator, right. And they make her out to be like this amazing woman, and she's a little girl next door.
Yeah, exactly.
She's kind of like a college professor you'd have a crush on because, that's just because she's there.
Yeah, I wouldn't even call her a college professor.
Well, she's cute.
Right.
But not... I wouldn't have put a poster up on my college dorm room wall in 1986 of her. No offense to her.
But I have to say, I did have her hair in the 80s.
Of course.
I did have her hair.
All right. So then what happens?
Okay, so
Connor McLeod's gone, nowhere to be found. It's what happens. Ramirez and his girlfriend Blossom. He calls her Blossom. That's not her name, but he calls her Blossom. They're hanging out. They're talking. They're having a nice time. And
yes, and then the castle shakes and the birds, all the pigeons start flying away, and he tells her to leave, to get out of there, which she doesn't. And the Kurgan comes in.
He just shows up.
He just comes in.
Like after, and what you don't really understand
How did he find them?
Well, you don't know because like they can immortals can feel each other.
Oh, I guess.
And like when they were fighting the Kurgan at first, it's not like he came back and found McCloud. It's like these guys jumped on him and you never saw him again.
Right. Exactly.
It's a little sketchy. But I guess if you're immortal, you've got time. It doesn't matter. You're not in a real hurry to make everything happen.
I guess.
So what happens? The Kurgan comes in.
The Kurgan comes in, and Sean Connery starts fighting with him, and
he's able to actually cut his throat open, but not all the way.
Right, and they're fighting, and then like they go up on the stairs, and then all the Kurgan has to do is like tap the stones, and they start like breaking off and popping out, and
they have immortal power.
All over the place.
Like the swords spark a lot when they hit the walls. There's power. Maybe it's because it's their immortal power.
Right, flowing through the sword. I don't know, but the castle basically falls apart. I'm sure it was centuries old.
It was very old under the immortal blows that it was suffering.
And so they're up on these stairs fighting. At that point, Heather could have left. She could have been like out of there, but no. No.
She watches.
Even though the stones are all falling and everything's falling on her, she's like still there. Yeah.
And he does, the Kurgan does say that he's going to have her because he thinks that
that's... So he's like, he asks Sean Connery, so is she your woman? And he's like, yeah, she's my woman.
And yeah, so Kurgan says, well, I'm going to, basically
yeah,
take her by force. And what happens to Ramirez?
So he gets decapitated.
Ramirez dies.
He dies.
And more energy is expended,
so
and the Kurgan... It's like you get the idea that when an immortal is killed, their energy is dispersed, and the person who's killed them gets that energy, gets that thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not... they talk about, like, the thing called the quickening, which they talk about. Like, Ramirez first tells Connor McCloud when they're running on the beach, you feel that's the quickening. Like, your body is getting stronger. But I always kind of got the idea that when you're getting this immortal power, that was the quickening. And every time, as you get closer to the prize, whatever that is.
Right. And the more of them you kill, the more power you have.
Yep.
Yeah.
Getting to a goal, whatever the prize is.
Yeah, the prize.
So then what happens?
Okay. So, then what happens? I don't know.
Well, then the Kurgan somehow goes away.
Oh, right. It's implied that he rapes Heather. And then he just is gone, and then it's like the next scene, and
well, then we watch Connor McCloud. Heather gets old. Blossom gets old.
Yeah, it's like then all of a sudden they're like together and happy and tending sheep and.
But then she gets old and dies. And then she
gets old with really bad... She didn't look old at all. They just whitened her hair and...
Come on, man. Don't be dissing now.
She did not look old. And then she died.
And
she had him promise that he would light a candle on her birthday.
And then we're pretty much away from the past.
Yeah.
And then we're back in the present day, and... Connor McCloud gets a friend of his, like a black dude. I forget what's the guy's name.
He's also an immortal.
Yeah, and he's played by Hugh Corshi, who later went on to be in The Phantom Menace, who played Captain Panaka.
Very cool.
And he plays Sunda Castigear.
Yes.
Castigear.
So they meet up at the gathering.
Well, yeah, they meet up. No, they meet like in Central Park.
Right.
And they're talking, and he says it's time for the gathering. They haven't seen each other in 100 years, and how you doing? Right. How you doing? They're friends, clearly, having a good time. And they all know that they're probably going to have to kill each other, but they're going to... yeah. And the first guy that you realize that the immortal from the very beginning of the movie with the battle, he was one of them, too.
Right.
And now
the guy doing backflips.
So all that we have left is Castigear, and we've got the Kurgan and Connor McCloud. And they've all come together to what Ramirez called the gathering.
Right. Okay, so Then you see a scene of the Kurgan and what's his
Castigear.
name? Castigear.
And here's another really...
In an alley.
Yeah, they're in an alley fighting. And crazily enough, a weird ex-Marine survivalist.
Yeah, right? He's driving by.
He just is driving by. With
a machine gun.
Car full of guns.
In his Trans Am.
I guess this is what happened in New York in the 80s. If you weren't doing cocaine, you were a survivalist and you were...
Right.
Driving around
in your Trans Am.
And he sees these two guys fighting. He's like, all right. He gets out with his guns.
He gets out. He's like, oh, a fight. He gets out with his machine gun. And he goes up there and he just starts blowing them away. Actually, by then, the Kurgan had chopped off Castigir's head.
Hugh Corshay's gone.
Yeah, and then the military guy was like, oh my God. So he goes up there with his gun and he starts blasting away. And like fills him with holes, and then he...
Well, and the Kurgan stabs him, but he doesn't die.
Right, he stabs him. Not only stabs him, but he like picks him up with the sword, and then flings him onto the wall. And of course, there's like a bunch of people watching from the alley.
There's all these bystanders.
Seriously?
And then there's like an old
couple. If I saw that, I would have been out of there. They're like, ooh.
There's an awesome scene with this old couple in the car. The looky-loos are driving by. What's going on? And the Kurgan...
Are you kidding me? If you saw something like that, do you think that you would just stay there and watch?
But it's how this movie is very Baroque. Like, it doesn't... Suddenly we're into weird fantasy land. And
so weird.
There are these rubberneckers like, oh, and then the Kurgan runs over and grabs the father and throws him out.
So
the old man.
At that point, don't you think that the woman would have gotten out of the car?
What? And then he gets in the car and starts driving, and then she winds up trying to get out and gets thrown onto the hood. It's this total...
So silly. Yeah. It was amusing.
It was amusing. So what happens between Connor MacLeod and Brenda?
Okay, so finally Connor MacLeod and Brenda, they hook up.
They hook up.
Oh, also you find out that his secretary is actually his adoptive daughter.
Yeah, to give him another flashback.
Yeah.
We go to Nazi Germany because why not? We don't go to the courts of France like in the 1700s. We go straight to Nazi Germany.
Although there was a scene of that too. There was a duel.
Well, that came later though.
Okay,
I think it was back and forth.
So he went to he was in the war, World War II, and was fighting the Nazis and finds a little girl hiding, picks her up, kills a Nazi, and it ends up that he basically raises her.
Yeah, he raises her. Actually, when Castigear first meets Connor MacLeod on the bridge, that's when Castigear goes, remember that time you were drunk? And then it goes back to... So it's like...
Yeah.
It's a little sketchy how this was put together.
And that scene was weird.
But it was cut out of the American release.
Yeah, it should have been.
Actually, that was cut out of the American release of the movie. The American release originally was shorter because they figured there's a lot of British humor or UK humor, not just British, but I guess Scottish and Irish. All the British Isles.
Okay.
There was humor there that they didn't think would apply to American audiences, so the version we got was missing that scene in the original version.
Okay. Yet, it's... Yeah,
but the version we saw is the uncut version.
Okay.
So we got to see, which is a totally weird, funny scene where he's drunk and in this duel and this guy keeps stabbing him.
Yeah, which before when people stab them, they feel the pain, but in this, like, he just kept getting stabbed and standing up and laughing. So it was really, it didn't make sense.
Yeah, it was a little sketchy.
Okay, where are we?
Well, basically, metallurgists...
Oh, yeah. He hooks up with Brenda. And then he goes off and leaves her. Hello, ding, ding, ding. Do you think that maybe somebody would come and get her?
History repeats itself.
Hello.
And the Kurgan comes and gets her.
He comes and just takes her.
And then what happens?
Then he tortures her. This scene was hilarious and freaky. I would be freaking out. He takes her in the car and he starts driving like a maniac. And It's terrifying.
She passes out.
She passes out because he keeps like, and then he's like mocking her and like, oh no, and it's like really like it reminded me of like an older brother teasing his little sister. It was very terrifying.
And they wind up on the set of a music video that's actually supposed to be Silver Cup Studios in New York, which is a real place. That's a very famous sign, but they've actually built it as a set too because they used it for the Queen music video.
Oh my god.
You know. And we should I want to give props when we hear Queen singing Who Wants to Live Forever.
Yes.
I mean, that becomes such a poignant song in terms of Freddie Mercury's legacy.
Yeah, that's a beautiful song.
It's a beautiful song, and it works really well with the flashbacks and all that. And it's a little on the nose, but it's all right.
It's very on the nose.
So then they get to Silver Cup Studios on the roof.
Yeah, they're on the roof.
And the Kurgan and
Kurgan
Connor
ties
McLeod
her to the sign.
Ties her to the sign.
Yeah. And, of course, Connor gets there, and she's like, ah! And he goes to save her. Hello. He goes to save her. Who do you think is going to be there waiting for you?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and he acts surprised when he starts attacking him. And so they start sword fighting on this sign.
Which collapses.
It collapses and it makes this water tower fall over.
Yeah.
It's like, why was there a water tower there too?
Because it looks cool.
Okay.
The roofs of buildings in New York have water towers.
Do they?
Yeah.
So this water tower spills out. Half the sign falls. You think that Brenda's going to fall too, but no, of course, that little piece that she's on happens to stay up. And then there's sparks everywhere because it was an electric sign, and there's sparks and water, and they're fighting, and they don't get electrocuted. They're in water with electricity.
Hey, you know what? They're immortal. Who knows?
I don't know.
And then they go inside.
Yeah, finally the rest of the sign falls. Brenda somehow gets loose from it, and they end up... this I don't get. So they fall through the roof?
They do fall through the roof.
But you don't see any water fall through.
Yeah, the water's fallen off by now. It's flowed off.
That's a lot of water.
It's flowed off the outside of the building. And they're kind of in the middle of the roof.
And how did Brenda end up in there? Because all of a sudden...
She goes down. She goes down and finds them.
How did she go down and find them?
Hey, she just does, man. They fall right through the roof.
I don't know. All of a sudden, Brenda's like just there.
She comes down to find him. But it's awesome because there's these giant panes of glass and the silhouette of them. I mean, it's epic. Michael Kamen scores rising, like wailing guitars of Brian May. I mean, it's epic. Don't you think it's epic?
Sure.
And there's the final battle between the Kurgan and McCloud.
Battle.
The girl is saved. And then it got to the point, what happens, and you were kind of laughing.
Okay, so they're sword fighting, and you think like, okay, this Kurgan guy, he's got so much strength, and they're all afraid of him, and you think like the battle's gonna be huge, but they just like tink tink, and then he chops his head off.
No. There's more than that. There's all these unnecessary sweeping camera moves on the ground when the camera just pans from one direction to the other and swoops in, and it's epic music video style filmmaking. It's peak 80s cinematography.
I guess at that point I was still wondering how Brenda got down there.
Yeah, I guess you were. So then, what happens?
Okay, so he chops the Kurgan's head off, and then all this crazy shit happens.
Yeah, then you were kind of freaking out. What happens?
Like, what? Then all these hand-drawn demons come spewing out of him, and there's blue
like monsters. It was kind of like the monsters from the Id and Forbidden Planet. And it's animated. It looks like we're in a whole different...
it's animated.
It's animated. And you were laughing.
I was laughing.
You're like, what is this?
Like,
What's happening?
What?
Why is this happening? And I'm just sitting there thinking it's happening because it's awesome. It is the prize. Connor McCloud is getting the prize.
Okay, the prize.
The energy is flowing into him. He's being surrounded by ancient creatures and all of history and the personification of all of this in the form of these hand-drawn animated
animations.
Creatures.
Yeah.
And they're all swirling in and they pick him up. He's rising up.
That's right. Kind of like the Beast in Beauty of the Beast when when he turns back into being a human. And the light shoots out of his hands.
Kind of like that.
And it picks him up and spins. Yeah, it was very Disney-like.
It was very Disney-like. And then
the prize.
Well, and what is the prize?
On.
What?
Oh, here's your prize. You get to die.
Well, it's not just mortality.
I know.
He can hear all the thoughts of men. He can read minds.
So
he has the wisdom of the ages. So presumably he's going to go on and do something amazing.
He's going to save humanity.
Save humanity. That's what he's supposed to do.
Right.
And then, they take a little trip back to the Scottish Highlands where he came from in a car. And you see the little highway that they'd probably been shooting off of just right out of camera.
Oh, I didn't see it.
Well, they go back to the Scottish Highlands, and there's this beautiful thing, and you hear Ramirez's voice echoing in McLeod's memory.
Right.
And it ends with this beautiful visage of the...
And he's with Brenda.
They
live happily ever after.
And if you'd seen this in 86 when it first came out...
If I'd seen this in 86...
Okay, well, now that we're here, we got to the end of the movie... What did you think of this movie, Elizabeth? What did you think of Highlander? Having never seen it before. Tell the audience.
Okay, so my 14-year-old self loved this movie. I wish I had seen it when I was 14.
Well, but, okay, your 14-year-old self loved it. So you did like this movie.
Like I said, my 14-year-old self loved this movie. Yeah. I had some...
Well, what problems did you have with it? You're supposed to elucidate us. I mean,
I feel bad because everybody loves this movie so much.
No. You're supposed to tell what you... I mean, the whole point is that you're seeing a movie you haven't seen, and now we're getting your insights.
You want me to tell you the truth?
Yes, I want you to tell us the truth.
It was full of cliches. There was bad acting. Some of it didn't make sense.
Don't look at me. Look at the audience. You're talking to them now.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
You got like how did you feel about the cinematography and the makeup effects, and did you like the Kurgan and Ramirez?
Terrible. They didn't even make her look old when Heather died. It was like she looked young with white hair.
And the Kurgan makeup, it's
yeah. And when he had put safety pins in it, like. It looked like it had been glued onto his neck.
We forgot about the scene where they meet in the church.
Yeah, that was weird and crazy.
Well, no, because Ramirez says the church is hallowed ground. We won't do anything on the church. And there was another thing they cut out of the American version that was in the version we saw when the Kurgan licks the priest's hand.
Yeah, whoa.
A lot of homoeroticism in this movie.
Yeah, that church scene was... crazy.
It was pretty crazy. I mean, the Kurgan was not nice to the nuns.
He was horrible. He was menacing.
But we left out that scene. They meet in the church kind of before the battle begins.
Right.
So tell me more about this movie. What more did you think about this movie?
I mean, other than my issues with it, it was amusing.
It was amusing.
Yeah, and like I said, I kept thinking about if I'd seen it when I was younger, I would have loved that movie.
I mean, I have to say, now... Obviously, I own this movie.
Yes.
I own multiple copies of this movie. I have a steelbook of this. I have the 30th anniversary version of this movie. This is a movie I have multiple copies of, and I've owned multiple copies of it. And I hadn't watched it in a while.
Uh-huh.
Even though I own it, and to be honest, it's very interesting to go back sometimes and watch movies that you haven't seen in a while, because I was struck by how sloppily made this movie actually is.
Yeah.
And I understand, if Mulcahy was a music video director, and hearing that the writers were saying that, he wasn't too concerned with continuity. This film is very much, that's why I say it's very much a product of the music video era. Mm. And when I said those 4 movies, those are 4 high profile movies. Like, this was still a very high profile film. It's a beloved film. People like it. It spawned 5 sequels.
Yeah, wow.
And obviously a TV series. So this continued. This was the beginning of although people say Highlander 2 is one of the worst movies ever made. And you find out the Immortals are actually, say it with me now, Aliens. From the planet
I have to see that.
No, you really don't.
They're aliens with the vampires?
No. They're not
they
aliens. But that would be funny.
They don't know the vampires?
The space vampires from Life Force who brought the Immortals to Earth.
The Immortals.
That actually is a crossover. Call IDW Comics.
Oh my God.
Life Force,
so great.
Life Force and Highlander.
Yes.
And you get to find out that it was the aliens from Life Force that seeded the Earth with Immortals.
Somehow we have to get...
there you go. There you go. That's
in there.
Well, Zardoz is about the Immortals. They're all immortal that live in the enclaves.
That's right.
So maybe the Life Force, after the Life Force, the space vampire ship leaves at the end of Life Force. At some point, it comes back.
It gets the Immortals from
Zeist, the planet,
from Zeist,
and put them back.
Oh my God!
You know what?
We
I think you stumbled on it. The Life Force Zardoz Highlander crossover. Oh I'm telling you, this is brilliant. An IDW comic. They'll publish this.
Man,
we should go sell it.
Totally.
You can pitch that idea.
But have to be. Their packages have to be wrapped with a bow.
Okay, they can be wrapped with a bow. But seriously, now looking back on this now, I mean, we live in an age where medieval films, whether it's Lord of the Rings, as you're eyeing the wine, whether it's Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones, I mean, now we're so Warcraft. We've seen so many sophisticated fantasy films come out in the wake of this. I mean, I will say that. The shooting on location is beautiful.
The location was beautiful.
There's only a few process shots of the castle, like at night. These are real locations.
Mm-hmm.
So, did you, aside from you saying it was cliche, is there still things that you now could enjoy?
I totally enjoyed this film.
You did enjoy it?
I did. I enjoyed it. Yeah.
But any more insights?
Well, didn't I just tell you exactly?
I know, but I mean, I'm just wondering if we could drill a little deeper.
Deeper?
Like into the like for me, this film, the fact that Queen was on the soundtrack, and the fact that it was really interesting to me that there was this kind of fantasy revival in the 80s. I mean, in 81 you had Excalibur, 81 you also had Clash of the Titans. And then things like Dragon Slayer, and then Ridley Scott's Legend that came out. Mm-hmm. I think Legend was 86. I might be wrong. It might be. But there was definitely they were trying to, with bigger budgets, they were trying to make fantasy movies come back. And I think in the wake of Star Wars, they were never that successful. That fantasy films, where science fiction movies flourished, horror films were flourishing, science fiction horror films were flourishing, but the fantasy genre they could never quite get until later.
Well, but there were so many, and we all loved that.
Well, yeah, but there was things like Yor, the Hunter from the Future, and there was a lot of like low budget Euro. Italian horror, Italian fantasy films. And I mean, this was sort of, they gave it a polished sheen. But again, the fantasy genre really didn't come into its own. It was still low rent, and people didn't dig it as much.
Well, except for Princess Bride.
Well, Princess Bride was also, which is also contemporary to this. It was funny.
Right.
Like, it wasn't like I don't know if they could have made Lord of the Rings at this time.
Right.
I mean, I know I'm getting a little away. I don't want to talk about examining the fantasy genre as it appeared in mid-'80s cinema. But I do think that this was a bid for respectability. The whole fantasy element, the whole immortal element, the whole Ramirez kind of thing. I mean, they did try, and I mean, did the pastiche of genres work for you? Did the cross between fantasy, the modern day, and the...
Yeah, I actually liked that element. I liked the idea that these people lived, for a long time, and that going back and forth between the current day and seeing part of their past. I thought that was interesting. I liked that.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, what else?
What else?
Well, I don't know. There must be more.
I think this could have been a really, really great movie.
Okay. And why didn't you feel that way?
Because the whole premise is a really interesting premise, and I think if it had been treated better and maybe some better acting, like I said, I mean, if they had put Sean Connery in the main role, I think this would have been a completely different film, and I think it probably would have worked better because he's a much better actor, and he's actually Scottish. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, there are people that have things to say to us, and hang on, let me throw on my glasses so I can see. Let's go back here. Bob Quall says he posted a birthday greeting on the Post-Geek Singularity Facebook page on Friday, but in case you missed it, happy belated birthday. Did you ever finish your alphabetical movie videos? You know what? I actually answered this earlier. I never did. I stopped at F, but...
I thought you were on G.
I didn't do G.
Right.
I was going to do G. I should get back to that. Jules Goodwin sends in a very generous super chat. I'll likely be asleep by the time the show starts, but just wanted to wish you well, as always, and to start the show off right. Well,
thank you.
Julius, that you did. That you did. Senor Ashish sends in a tip and says, Mulcahy's The Shadow, with Alec Baldwin, has a special place in my heart. Burton's Batman meets Beatty's Dick Tracy. A great pulp feel, stunning VFX, thrilling and eerie score. Impeccable production design, all roles perfectly cast with Alec Baldwin in his prime, worth a viewing. I have to say, I really I liked what Russell Mulcahy did after this. He did some really interesting stuff. He did a ripoff of Seven that stars Leland Orser and Christopher Lambert called Resurrection that I thought was pretty good. Obviously did The Shadow, which I thought was pretty good. And I just think that this movie was... from a technical standpoint, it is a little sloppy. But yeah, he got really, really good. Kendiana Jones is here and says, I remember the 9th grade. Nothing brought me and my geek friends together like Queen's A Kind of Magic cassette and Highlander. Happy Halloween, ladies. Nuns, no sense of humor. No, that was great. I love that.
That was.
Clancy Brown, I mean,
yeah,
who doesn't remember Clancy Brown as the Kurgan? Everyone loved Clancy Brown.
And he's a good actor, too.
He is a good actor. And, of course, he's the toughest screw that ever walked the corridors of Shawshank Prison. Mm-hmm. I mean, everyone loves Clancy Brown, the voice of Lex Luthor. As a matter of fact, I loved Clancy Brown because he was in Rick Rosenthal's Bad Boys. And he was in the prison. That's the first time he made an impression on me, and I think that was 81 as well. Maybe it was 82, I'm not sure. But I love Esai Morales and Sean Penn. That was great stuff. Alexander Wilson says the Highlander TV show was better than the movie. It totally was better than the movie. And and then they team up later, right? Connor McLeod comes back. And by the way, Ramirez came back in Highlander 2.
Wait, in the TV show, who was...
Adrian Paul.
Okay.
I think it was Adrian Paul, I believe. But yeah, and I thought the show was better. I thought, it's interesting. I think the Highlander TV series was actually quite good. I really liked it. The same way I really liked the Sarah Connor Chronicles. I thought the Sarah Connor Chronicles were good. Kaz Graphics is here. Hello, Kaz. How are you, sir? Highlander 2 and Battlefield Earth. Please do not subject the ace to those. I will not. I might show her.
But they're aliens. You know how I feel about aliens.
Oh, my God.
Immortal vampire aliens.
Immortal vampire space aliens. Kendiana Jones says, please do a whining about Yor the Hunter from the Future. Man, I can't go there. I mean, there's the what is it? Not the Iron Eagle, but the Fighting Eagle or whatever. They're all Yor the Hunter from the Future. I can't. These were all like it was easy to do like low budget movies in the desert, like in Italy or Spain, and isn't like is Reb Brown Yor the Hunter from the Future? It's just I can't. A lot of people like that stuff. Like, after seeing Conan the Barbarian, to me, that was the most respectable the fantasy genre really was. And that was 82. That was May of of 82. And I loved
that.
I loved Conan and I loved Excalibur, you know, but even Excalibur, you go back and you look at it, the filmmaking is a little, it has a lot, it's almost the older brother of Highlander in a way. But I loved both Conan and I loved Excalibur. But then when you got to Conan the Destroyer, it was the influence not so good. So wait, did you like Conan? Did you like Excalibur?
Did. Yeah. I don't know if I've seen Excalibur, but I love Conan.
Excalibur would be a great... If you haven't seen Excalibur, that should be... After Empire Strikes Back, Excalibur should be our Friday.
Okay.
That's what we should
down.
watch. Excalibur's great.
All right.
It's great. You've never seen Excalibur?
I'm not sure.
Wow.
You know how I forget these things.
You do forget these things. Anthony Gonzalez is here. How will you guys follow up Highlander? Make her watch Universal Soldier or I Come in Peace? Well, as everyone knows, let me just make sure. Let me get this correct. Today is May 18th. Wednesday night, our whining about movies to celebrate the 40th anniversary will be The Empire Strikes Back. The Empire Strikes Back came out May 21st. I know you've seen that, but you haven't seen it in a while. We're going to go back and revisit The Empire Strikes Back for its 40th anniversary.
Yeah.
It might be a 2-bottler, 2-hour show. So, but I can't, I Come in Peace. Universal Soldier is actually pretty legit. I Come in Peace, not as much. I mean, I'm trying to stay away from, after saying Godzilla versus Monster Zero, but some of these movies, I don't know. I mean, we could turn it into, I want to keep it a little highbrow, sort of. We're kind of being pulled into, I guess the highbrow movies weren't as fun. How do you feel about watching a movie like this? Like, it's like, do you feel strange that for me, like, I have all these movies in my collection? I show you Federico Fellini films, and then I'm like, now let's watch Godzilla versus Monster Zero.
Well, knowing you, it all makes sense. Like, yeah, of course you would have that, breadth of difference in films on your shelves. It'd be nice to go back and forth, highbrow and then cult classic. And...
Yeah, so we're going to Empire next.
Yeah.
We're going to Empire next. But, Anthony, Universal Soldier is not bad. I like Universal Soldier. So that's not bad. Candiana Jones sends in a tip, says, yes, Red Brown. Red Brown is your. Don't forget Space Mutiny either. Oh, who could forget Space Mutiny? Another Mystery Science Theater 3000 movie. Oh, I won't. Rob Korziak? Huh. Rob says, hey, Rob, are you familiar with Mr. Plinkett's reviews? Because Red Letter Media just posted their Picard Plinkett review. What was I just watching as we ate dinner before we did this show?
Exactly.
For those of you who don't know, I've been a huge fan of Red Letter Media and Mr. Plinkett and his reviews of... Well, he first did reviews of all 4 Generations movies. Those guys love Star Trek. They know Star Trek like the back of their hands. I have been waiting for this Picard review for a long time, and I have to say, it's a little self-indulgent, but once it gets rolling, it is so spot on, and it eviscerates. I thought I complained about Picard. This was a deep dive evisceration to the very DNA of why Star Trek Picard was so ungodly, horribly awful. And bravo. And to be honest, I've only gotten halfway through the review. It's an hour and a half.
Right.
And I'm already, I was just, was I not like laughing with glee?
You were laughing.
I was laughing with glee.
Yes.
Laughing with glee. So Rob, I can't wait. Liam in Japan. Hey, how's it going, man? If you get a chance, please visit Eileen Donan Castle in the north of Scotland, where this was filmed. Stunning scenery and great for stargazing. I've never been to Scotland.
I would love
I've never been to Scotland or Ireland. I've been to the UK, but I have not been to... I've always wanted to go to both.
Yes, me too.
But Liam, wasn't it you who just said that I hadn't been in Glasgow on a Saturday night or something? Well, that was, terrible. Jermaine King says, Excalibur is my favorite movie. Elizabeth will love it.
Awesome.
Well, then maybe we should watch it. We'll make that our Friday movie. That'll be
cool.
that'll be good. That'll be good. Roberto Suarez is here. The apex of 80s B fantasy films for me was Hawk the Slayer with John Terry and Jack Palance. It was cheap, goofy, and cheesy, but it was the closest thing to Dungeons and Dragons movie at the time. What about Sword and the Sorcerer? Albert Pune's Sword and the Sorcerer. They tried hard, man. I'm telling you, the fantasy genre in the 80s has some cheeseball classics. They did try hard. But it's hard. It was hard. It's hard. Great fantasy is tough because great fantasy requires verisimilitude to work. I mean, a fantasy movie can be torpedoed by a bad costume.
Yes.
If you don't buy the costume that they're wearing.
Yeah.
And I did think that the Scottish Highland scenes in Highlander felt authentic.
They did.
I did feel that they felt that it did not betray the verisimilitude of the film.
What I didn't like was his ginormous, frumpy coat that he was wearing in the 80s.
Oh, you didn't like? Well, he had to hide his sword.
Yeah, and how did he sit in those seats with a sword? That giant sword.
Well, he just had it, like, it can be done. Look,
he looked so frumpy when he was in real time,
well, he was always what I didn't get is he's wearing tennis shoes.
Tennis shoes and an overcoat, like this ginormous.
Like he did not look like a man.
It was all wrinkled. It was so.
Yeah, I didn't get that.
He looked like a homeless dude.
He did look like he didn't look like a man of wealth and taste, a man who was refined.
He lived in that gorgeous apartment, and he owned an antique shop, like of really expensive antiques, and yet he looked like a homeless dude.
But I felt he was on the DL. Like, he didn't want anyone to know.
Yeah, but, come on.
Well, I don't know.
Homeless dude?
You don't know. I don't know. Well, I mean, it was weird. Like, I felt like there were chunks of this movie that were missing, or they didn't shoot things.
Yeah.
Like they needed to explain. Like, remember, he only had one outfit the whole movie. Although, no, because he got dressed up when he went to see Brenda.
But he was still wearing that coat.
No, he was wearing a different coat.
No.
Well, he was wearing like a jacket or something. It's like he cleaned up.
Sure.
Come on. Kendiana Jones sends in a tip and says, bad movie night used to be a tradition at my house, even before Mystery Science Theater 3000. Another new show format, Rob. What say you? See, here's the thing. I don't want to make fun of movies. I mean, I try, even though I would like to do the reverse of Mystery Science Theater 3000 and take movies that are traditionally people consider bad. Like, I'm really looking forward to tomorrow, Danger Diabolic, or just Diabolic, comes out on Blu-ray. Something I've wanted this for a long time in HD, and Mystery Science Theater did it and they made fun of it, and I would do the opposite. I would say that Diabolic is worth celebrating, and I don't like bad movie night spun me out. Maybe that's just me because I take it too seriously. I mean, we could do that, but
you wouldn't be into it. I don't think you could do it.
Well,
because you know how hard it is to make a film, so I don't think that you enjoy making fun of somebody's hard work.
It's true. I don't. You are correct about that. It's hard for me to do that.
Yeah.
It is hard for me to do that. Well, Elizabeth, we are over time.
We are. We seem to do that.
So the time has come for our bottoms-up scale.
Yes, it is.
And on a scale of 1 to 4 glasses of wine. First of all, why do we have the bottoms-up scale?
4 glasses of wine because there are 4 glasses in a bottle.
We haven't even finished this whole thing yet.
What?
Why don't we kill it?
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. Okay, so
at least the way Rob pours, there are 4 glasses,
of wine
in our bottles.
So on our bottoms-up scale.
On our bottoms-up scale.
What would you give Highlander? A movie that is, by the way, 34 years old now.
I am going to give it 2.5 glasses. 2.5. Is that too much?
Don't look at me. It's your thing.
2.25.
2.25. 2.25. Well, I was actually also going to give Highlander 2.5. 2.5. But I was going to bump it up to like 2.75 only because this movie spawned 5 sequels and a TV series.
Right.
It did. Like I said, is an influential
is great.
film.
I like the premise. If it had been done differently, it would have been a great movie.
Well, they're talking about remaking this film.
Oh, that'd be cool.
And it would be really interesting to, like, I would follow, if I remade this movie, if I was tasked with remaking this film, I would follow McCloud. I would rather see him spend more time, like, go back to ancient Egypt, go further back, and you would follow his... And for, like, centuries, he wouldn't know anything about immortals. Like, he'd be trying to figure out how to make his way in the world, and he wouldn't find Ramirez until he'd been alive for 1,000 years. Like, he never knew. He didn't know there were other immortals out there, even though the world was a much smaller place, but...
Did he ever wonder why he was living forever?
Yeah, well, that's why I would follow that more. Like,
here's another question I have. Okay, so if these people are immortals and they live forever, how come their aging stops at different places? Like, obviously, Sean Connery was much older than Connor, right? So why did his aging stop when he already had gray hair?
Maybe you don't find out you're immortal until the first time you die. Like, Connor was run through in his life essence. He stopped breathing, and so that's when his immortality kicks in. So the first time you're put down.
I see.
I don't know if this is true. This is what I would posit.
Well, that makes sense.
As a veteran of science fiction, fantasy, and horror.
We should add that into our fusion of
Life Force.
Yeah, Life Force.
Highlander and Zardoz. Well, yeah, we could do that.
Yeah, that works.
All right, so you give it 2.25.
Yes.
Highlander 2.25 from you, and I'll give it 2.75.
All right.
Even though it's hard to go back and watch movies that I liked in the theater when I first saw them, but this is a movie that I've watched over the years, and watching it now, it's very interesting watching these movies, because I saw this in the theater when it opened. I saw it in downtown Seattle, actually, at the UA-70, where I saw Empire Strikes Back. And, well, it was in the next theater, the UA-150. But, yeah, so wherever you are when you die that first time and you come back to life, that's when I think you get locked in. That's
into your age.
You get locked into your age.
So when you're about 30, you're like, okay, I gotta die for a second here.
Yeah, but you don't know you're an immortal.
Right, that's true.
So Connor McCloud, it was his first battle. He was never
What if you never die? What if you never... Then what?
I don't know. Maybe if you never do...
Then what? You get like to 100 years old and you're old and decrepit and you stay that way forever?
I don't know. These are all questions that... who lives to be 100 back then anyway?
That's true.
Life was a lot more dangerous.
True.
There are many questions.
So
many questions we cannot answer tonight. But this brings us to the end of Elizabeth's Whining About Movies, episode 29. And what do we say, Elizabeth, when we get to the end?
We say that everybody has a story to tell that you haven't heard yet. And all you have to do is listen.
That is correct.
Yes.
And
you should have a better night.
You should have a better night. And as always, have a better night. And we're going to be back on Wednesday talking about, for Elizabeth's 30, we're going to talk about the 40th anniversary of The Empire Strikes Back.
If we're going to go on for 2 hours...
We might not go on for 2 hours, I'm just saying.
Like, okay.
Because we don't really have to spend much time explaining what it's about.
Everyone has seen it, or at least I hope everyone's
seen it. We'll talk about what it means and as far as the Star Wars pantheon goes, that kind of thing. It'll be more of an editorial than a recap.
All right. I don't think we need 2 hours for that.
I don't think we need 2 hours for it either. All right, everyone. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting the show. We want to say thanks to our moderators, of course, Louis Yu, who is always here for the Whining About Movies shows. And we want to thank the Richard for running great watch parties. He was doing an all-Western watch party this weekend. And if you want to join the Whining About Movies Facebook page, or you want to join the Post-Geek Singularity Facebook page, we do encourage you.
And send letters. We love letters.
We love letters. And also, where can people find you on social media, Elizabeth?
Okay, so on Facebook, I'm Elizabeth Bell, ELYSABETHBELLE. On Instagram, I am EG Bell, BELLE. And on Twitter, I am Elizabeth Bell.
And people can see your artwork and things that you make
On
that
my
they
Instagram.
can buy on your Instagram page.
You can buy prints of any of my paintings. You can buy bags, T-shirts on my Instagram, EG Bell, BELLE.
Which is good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here, ladies and gentlemen, kind beings, aliens from across the 28 known galaxies. We'll look forward to seeing you here on Wednesday night for The Empire Strikes Back.
I'm excited.
I'm excited, too. All right, everyone. I'll see you tomorrow on the John Campea Show and on the 421st episode of Robservations, which is crazy. And then I'm also on John Roca's podcast tomorrow night. So look for the Outlaws podcast. That'll be fun. Mm-hmm. So I hope you can join us there. Everybody stay safe, socially distance, or open your business. Whatever you need to do.
Safely, though.
Safely, though. Thanks very much.